Hello everyone, Aaron here from Push Square, and the news has just come in that Sony has cancelled 2 more of its live service projects, one from Bend Studios, the developer of Days Gone, and the other from Bluepoint Games, the developer of the Shadow of the Colossus and Demon's Souls remake. I think this is very telling of Sony's overall position on the live service push right now, and I want to really get into that. Just a few years ago, Sony was clearly all in, very enthusiastic. We had the announcement that 12 different projects were in development across the plethora of PlayStation studios. Yet as time has gone on, that enthusiasm has dwindled away as we've seen flops, cancellations, and just troubling news behind the scenes. Taking a look to the last few years, what have we had? Destruction All-Stars didn't really make much of an impact. Concord flopped disastrously, being closed down just after 2 weeks. This game took years to develop. Hundreds of millions of dollars were sunk into it, yet after 2 weeks, you couldn't even buy it. All those that did were refunded. It doesn't exist anymore. Looking to those cancellations, The Last of Us multiplayer project, something that I was looking forward to for such a long time. I thought it sounded like it could have been really cool, but evidently Sony and Naughty Dog bit off more than they could chew. They tried to make it this huge live service thing when what people really wanted, like myself, was just The Last of Us factions, but with The Last of Us Part 2 gameplay. That's all I wanted, really, genuinely, and I think it could have been a great hit had they just done that. What it all really pertains to is that Sony has had a severe mismanagement of what live service is and the live service expectation. I think everyone looks to the big hits like Apex Legends, Destiny back in the day, The Division back in the day. There's so many of these big games, legacy games, when the live service push was really, or the live service era was really kicking off, and you still have things like Fortnite doing very, very well, but it's become such an oversaturated market that it's near impossible to get into. Yet, time and time again, we have these studios coming in with lofty expectations. We're going to be the ones that break into this. We're going to be the next big game. And quite often, I think that expectation in itself is what causes the issues. Going in expecting your game to be played by hundreds of thousands of people every day. Going in and expecting your game to last, like immediately get an audience, immediately have a constant stream of revenue. To talk about a game that I actually really like in terms of live service, the finals, I think a game like that has done it right in the way that they don't expect to top the highest and most played live service games. They don't expect to be the best of the best, to have this insane amount of revenue coming in. I think they've approached things with the finals where they know it's going to be the underdog, and they know it's going to sit here when everything else is up here, but that's fine. And I think that's one of the biggest issues with so many of these live service games, is they come in with this when really they should be looking at that. But of course, when you're pouring in hundreds of millions of dollars and years of development time into these projects, you want this. You don't want to spend all that money to come in here, especially since the development cycles of these games are just getting longer and longer and longer. It's not all completely bad tidings, I don't think. Obviously, we've seen something like Helldivers 2 really light the world on fire, but I do think that is a cheaper developed game. It's a more focused experience, and its live service aspects, as we've seen and heard complaints about, they've not maybe had the amount of content there, but what that game has gone for is just a core fun experience, rather than we need a game that does all of this and has all these things for people to come back to and stuff for them to buy and content schedules and all of that, when really what you need is a core experience. I think part of the sadness of this, I know a lot of people are going to be happy that live service is now a bit of a bad juju for Sony. They're evidently steadily moving away from it. We're still to see from other projects like Bungie's Marathon, Fair Games. They're projects that we've still to hear about, and projects I imagine we might still see at some point. I don't expect Sony to be completely removed from this, but it is sad to see that, to know really that Sony's going to be very wary and very apprehensive about doing anything in that kind of live service multiplayer space when there is still the potential. I think it does make me sad to know that Sony doesn't really have like a staple multiplayer shooter, for example. And I know there's talk of would it actually be popular, but something like a Killzone multiplayer game would have been really, really cool. I just think that when people say multiplayer and they put live service in there, there's just that expectation. You want to go for gold, and I think that's really where Sony has gone wrong, is just aiming too high when they could have just went for a bunch of really cool live service games. Because multiplayer is not bad. Multiplayer isn't. I know there's like this narrative in a lot of ways where people think that live service just automatically means this vapid, money-grabbing experience that's just soulless in so many ways, and I know there are games like that, but that's also just not what live service is to its core. You know, that when you look at it factually, I suppose you could apply all these things. It's monetization, new content, things to just pull you back in to play the same experience, but there are so many games out there that actually have benefited and shown what could be really possible with this long-tail live service experience, like Destiny. I mean, Destiny 2, the final shape, I thought, although like I'm kind of in my head done with the game at this point, I'd like to see what they do more in the future, but playing that expansion, I felt like, wow, this is such a cool journey that I've been on through this live service game over the years, and that was something special there. Then you have these kind of smaller games like Hunt Showdown, which has got such an avid community, and it's such a unique experience. And then over on PC, of course, you've got Escape from Tarkov, and people are still playing Counter-Strike. And when you think about your core days as well, like as a teenager, I think of Modern Warfare 2, playing with my friends, Black Ops 6, and then of course there's plenty of people that were right into their Halo games back in the day, or Gears of War. Multiplayer isn't the issue here. I think it's just that expectation and that rampant monetization of everything within it, and I don't think it needs to be that way. And I think there are examples out there of people that don't do that, or I think just have that as a side to the core experience, like Helldivers, like Hunt Showdown, like the finals for me. I think there is some, that's where you go, and that's where Sony's made this mistake, where they're just going too big. And that's not even to say that these projects would have been bad. I mean, a God of War live service game, I don't know how that looks, I don't know what that entails. It certainly would have piqued my interest in some way or another. But yeah, I think this is really showing a pretty hard mismanagement of Sony at the top of the game, chasing trends and stuff, and with these development cycles taking so long, they're really just coming 5 to 10 years too late. Had a God of War live service game dropped with the PS5, let's say, when, you know, God of War Reboot had come out a couple of years prior, maybe that could have been something that people were interested in. But now, as we go into 2025, there is certainly the multiplayer space, and the attitude towards it is a lot more fickle, sorry. I think it's too little too late, and I think there's going to be ramifications and consequences to these decisions. I think we're going to see quite possibly a very empty looking schedule going forward when you think about Naughty Dog perhaps is big enough to develop The Last of Us multiplayer and Intergalactic at the same time, within the multiplayer being cancelled. They just all go in on Intergalactic. But Bluepoint Games, Bend Studio, do they have the bandwidth to do both at the same time? No, probably not. So that means these years that they've spent developing these live service games that ultimately have led to nothing, then that means they're essentially, or potentially, starting from scratch. I think it's very telling news. I think it's a little disappointing to hear that Sony essentially has messed up so much. I think especially because so many people know that Sony is the single player blockbuster place. You know, you buy a PlayStation for God of War Ragnarok, for Spider-Man 2, for Horizon Forbidden West, and it's sad to know that there would have been more of those types of games, but we've been focusing too hard on this live service stuff. And again, I don't think that's bad in itself. It's just that expectation. Lower the resources you're pouring into it. Make something that's just fun and a little bit smaller, and maybe then the attitude changes. We're interested in this, build it over time. I don't know. Anyway, these have been my rambles about this. Let me know what you're thinking about it. Are you glad to see this? It's almost like the bubble has burst on this for Sony. What do you think their moves are going to be from here on out? Do you think we're still going to see some of these multiplayer games like fair games? I've heard a bit of chatter that people just aren't really expecting it to come to anything now, but I'm not sure. I'm not so sure myself. Let me know what you're thinking down in the comments below. But anyway, as always, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, leave a like, maybe even subscribe to the channel for more PlayStation video content just like this. It's early in the morning, that's partly why I'm seeming tired and deflated, but it's sad news as well. So yeah, anyway, until next time, I've been Aaron, and this has been Push Square.